Hey there, welcome into the show. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now. My name is Chase Sr. So glad all of you are hanging out here with me. Coming up on the show, NFL Week 5 preview between the Denver Broncos and the Philadelphia Eagles as the Birds look to stay unbeaten. Sunday, October 5th, that is when kickoff is taking place at Lincoln Financial Field this upcoming Sunday for Week 5. 1 p.m. Eastern is when kickoff will take place. The total over-under for this game at 43.5 and the Birds, 3.5-point favorites. That number has changed a little bit over the last 24 hours. The opening line, Philadelphia, -4. It's now gone down to the Eagles, -3.5, probably because the Denver Broncos throttled the Cincinnati Bengals on Monday Night Football. Subscribe and join us. We go live for every single Eagles game right here on the channel, and we'll be live again for our Eagles Now watch party. You see the figures here to my right. 131,444 people are subscribed to this channel worldwide. And we don't just go live for watch parties. We do shows like this every single day year-round. So if you want Eagles coverage that is informative, insightful, entertaining, thought-provoking, where you have a voice, join the movement and lock us in today. As for the Denver Broncos so far, it's been an okay season for Denver, considering the expectations that the Broncos had going into 2025. And they started off with a win over Tennessee, but that game a little bit too close for their liking. 20-12 winners over a Tennessee team that still does not have a win. Week 2, the Broncos were in an opportunity to beat the Indianapolis Colts on the road, and obviously the Colts, a really good story with former Eagles OC Shane Steichen and Daniel Jones. He's revived his career. Bo Nix threw a bad pick late in that game, and the Broncos lost 29-28. Then, another close game for Denver, a 23-20 loss to the Los Angeles Chargers in Week 3. The Chargers moved to 3-0 with that victory, and then this past Sunday suffered their first loss of the year in a defeat to the New York Giants on the road. And then the Broncos last night, 28-3 winners over the Cincinnati Bengals. And I know that the Bengals going into that game 2-1. But Joe Burrow is going to be out until December. A bad form of turf toe, had to undergo surgery. Jake Browning is not it. And that Bengals offense really struggled in that game. It was a tall test for them going on the road, 2 Mile High, playing a Broncos defense that's one of the top units in the NFL, and Denver able to take advantage. And they dominated that football game. They were really sound on offense and on defense. Receiving-wise, I thought that the receivers came to play with Marvin Mims, Cortland Sutton. Bo Nix probably played his best game of the year. The Broncos continue to run the ball well, and their defense was lights out. As far as the Eagles go, they have played in one-score games every single matchup. But interestingly enough, Philadelphia has covered in 3 straight games, even though those ball games have come down to the wire. Week 1, Philadelphia beat the Dallas Cowboys 24-20. Week 2, a road win over the Kansas City Chiefs 20-17. Another one-score win against the Rams in Week 3 as the Birds popped off 26 unanswered points in the second half to beat Los Angeles 33-26. And then the Eagles take that massive lead. At one point, they were up 31-13. Buccaneers came roaring back on a couple of occasions, and then the Birds able to hold on for a 31-25 victory. I think that all of these victories for the Eagles have been high-level, quality wins. This is also going to be a rare matchup between Philadelphia and Denver. The Eagles, 9-5 all-time against the Broncos. The last meeting between these two teams was all the way back in 2021. First year for Nick Sirianni. First year for Jalen Hurts as the full-time starter. Jordan Howard was the leading rusher for the Eagles in this game. Teddy Bridgewater was the quarterback for the Broncos. Obviously, these two teams are looking a lot different as compared to all the way back then, but because the Broncos play in the AFC West, the Eagles play in the NFC East, they do not play a lot. When I scout the Denver Broncos, I had high expectations for Denver going into this year. They were able to end their long playoff drought last year with a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix, who performed very well under the great offensive mind that is Sean Payton. Last year, they had one of the top offensive lines in the game. That is still the case this year. Last year, their defense, truly elite. This year, the defense continues to be elite. A little bit surprised with how they've looked. I think Broncos fans would tell you the same thing, that they expected the Broncos to look and play a little bit better, but maybe that win over Cincinnati can get some momentum going for the Broncos, get that confidence up, because they did play their best football, albeit against an opponent in Cincinnati that I don't think is very good without Joe Burrow. Obviously, the Bengals have some really good weapons on offense. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. I like their ground game as well. The brother of Sidney Brown, Chase Brown, is a good player, but defensively they're not good, and Jake Browning is just not even a good backup quarterback. So this year, scouting the Broncos, the defense is their calling card. They're giving up 16.8 points per game. That's tied for second in the National Football League. They are running the football extremely well with J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey, the second-round pick rookie out of Central Florida. The Broncos are averaging 143.3 rushing yards per game. That ranks fifth among the 32 teams in the NFL. And part of the reason why the Broncos are 2-2 and why they've been kind of mid, Bo Nix has been just okay. Not going to call it a sophomore slump yet, but he's turning the football over, missing some throws, and he just hasn't played up to his potential like we saw last year. This Broncos team, so stout up front. Sean Payton always prioritizes the offensive line, and with Sean Payton calling the plays on offense, Vance Joseph calling the plays on defense, they also have a really good special teams coordinator. This is a very well-coached team. Scouting the Eagles, of course, the big question for Philadelphia through the first month, the first 4 games of the year, can the offense play a full 60 minutes? They haven't done it once to start this year. Can it be this week against Denver? Really good defense that's coming to Lincoln Financial Field. This offense, called by Kevin Patullo, and I'm going to give him some grace because he's a first-time play caller, it's lacked rhythm and it's lacked explosive plays. We saw some explosives in the second half against the Rams. We saw some pop plays and explosives in the first half against the Buccaneers, but again, consistency is a really big problem. On offense, got to give the credit where credit is due, right? This Eagles offense has kept the ball out of harm's way. And a big reason why the Eagles have been able to win all of these one-score games, they're not turning the football over. They don't have a turnover on offense yet this year. And I believe they are +4 in the turnover margin. That is a recipe for success at the NFL level. The defense under Vic Fangio has had a lot of breakdowns, and they've given up a lot of explosive plays, especially the 270-yarders in the third quarter against the Buccaneers. They've had some coverage breakdowns on that back end, and obviously some new faces and new roles there. But I do think this Eagles defense is legit. I think they're going to continue to get better. What I love from this Eagles defense is that they've forced a lot of turnovers, and at the end of games, they've bent, they have not broken, and they've come through with some monster clutch stops in crunch time. And this Eagles team, this is depth, this is talent, this is stamina, it's conditioning, it's mental makeup. They really thrive in close games. As far as how these two teams stack up on both sides of the ball. First, let's take a gander at Denver here. Again, a pretty mediocre start offensively, and a lot of that is because Bo Nix has been kind of average. They're averaging 24 points per game, that's 16th in the NFL. They are moving it, though. 354.5 yards per game. That ranks number 9. They are averaging 5.6 yards per play. You can live there. That's 10th in the NFL. They've been just okay on third downs, a 39.2% third down conversion rate. In the red zone, they have been very good. Number 8 there. They're scoring touchdowns when they get inside the red area, 66.6% of the time. The defense, awesome. Led by Defensive Player of the Year in 2024, Patrick Surtain. They have a really good defensive line as well. They're giving up, as I noted, 16.8 points per ball game. That's number 2 in the NFL. They're 10th in yards per game surrendered at 285.3. 8th in yards per play at 4.7. They get off the field on third downs, number 4 there at 32.7%. This is the number 1 red zone defense in the NFL, 25%. You know, it's crazy. The Eagles, despite their offensive struggles, number 1 red zone offense in the NFL. Philadelphia this season, 11 trips inside the 20, 11 touchdowns. They are averaging 27 points per game. That is 7th in the NFL. But these numbers have to get better. 30th in yards per game, 30th in yards per play at 4.2. But in some of these money areas, red zone, third downs, the Eagles have thrived. They're number 8 in third down conversion rate at 41.8%. I expect these defensive numbers to go up because the eye test tells me the defense has performed better than this, and there's too much talent on that side of the ball to be in the range that the Eagles are in here on defense. 15th in points per game at 22. Sometimes that's because of the offense and them not having long, sustainable drives. 22nd in yards per game, 18th in yards per play, 14th on third downs, but they're number 3 in the red zone. Teams are scoring a touchdown when they get inside the 20, only 36.3% of the time. As far as some Eagles injury news, context here, I'm recording this show on Tuesday, September 30th. These are some of the injuries coming out of the Buccaneers game. Defensive end Obu Okoronkwo, triceps injury. He's on injured reserve. And so I would imagine for the first time this year against Denver, we're going to see Azeez Ojulari active for a game day. Right guard Tyler Steen left the game with that kind of hyperextended knee. He did come back to finish the ball game for the second consecutive week. Lane Johnson banged up, a stinger against the Rams, shoulder injury against the Buccaneers, and then defensive tackle Jalen Carter suffered that shoulder injury. We'll also continue to keep tabs on the health status of Adoree Jackson. He didn't play against Tampa Bay. That's why Keely Ringo got the start. This Broncos team, pretty healthy unit. Again, they played that latter game on the doubleheader for Monday Night Football. They came out of the game pretty much unscathed. But the biggest injury concern for the Broncos, Marvin Mims with a hip injury. He was limited all week, questionable going into that game against Cincinnati. He played, and he played very well. Elsewhere, Evan Ingram hasn't been right, but he was a full participant, but clearly the back injury is definitely impacting him. Other players on the Broncos injury report, Nate Adkins, Nick Bonita, really good player, John Franklin Myers, Alex Singleton, the former Eagle, and then, of course, as I mentioned, Marvin Mims and Evan Ingram. Dre Greenlaw, a star linebacker formerly of the San Francisco 49ers, continues to battle injuries. He tore his Achilles in the Super Bowl back 2 Februaries ago, came back, and then got injured again for San Francisco. Then he hurt his quad on the same leg where he tore his Achilles. He's on injured reserve, and so he's not going to play in this game. And if I were to point to a weakness for Denver, it is their linebacking core. More on that a little bit later. Other notables for the Birds. They have won 13 straight games at Lincoln Financial Field. Jeffrey Lurie, I know that you want to bring a Super Bowl to Philadelphia. I know that at some point in the next 10 years, you probably want to build a new stadium. I don't want it to be a dome. And I know if it's a dome, how loud the Eagles fans are is going to make that a really difficult place to play. I like cold weather games. It gives you an edge. I like being mentally and physically tough. That happens playing in all types of weather conditions. I like when you can play in the snow against a Rams team that plays indoors and is from the West Coast, and you clearly get the edge there. This is an unbelievable home field advantage, and honestly, for a long time, it wasn't a great home field advantage. Of late, though, it has 13 straight home wins at the Lincoln South Philly. Incredible. Eagles fans continue to show up and show out. I know you do on this program. I know you do at the link and when the Eagles are on the road. The Eagles have also covered, if you're a big bettor out there, 3 straight games, even though these games have been very close. And Philadelphia here, I think this is notable, has the obvious rest advantage. Yes, they were on the road on Sunday, but they played an early game, and they're going to be at home in Week 5. The Broncos played Monday Night Football, and obviously they're stationed in Denver, and they have to travel across the country, and this game is going to be 1 p.m. Eastern. And so the Eagles have the rest advantage and the body clock advantage in this game. And I know a lot of Eagles fans are very frustrated with how the season has started for this Eagles offense. If you look around the NFL, and obviously my job is to cover all 32 teams and keep eyes and keep tabs on all 32 teams. You look around the NFL, telling you this right now. I know that they can be better on offense, but they're in a great spot. The Eagles are by far the best team in the NFC. And how they play, it just looks and feels different compared to almost every other team across the league as far as being a well-rounded ball club. Some of the offensive football I see and the quarterback play that I see, the lack of talent that I see for other teams across the NFL, it's a joke. So Eagles fans should be relishing in this moment right now, which is a very special tenure and time to be an Eagles fan for this franchise, and you should be feeling pretty good about yourselves about what we've seen from this Eagles team 4 games in. All right, we're only starting to take flight here for our Broncos-Eagles preview, but I got to ask you, this is today's poll question. It's the pinned comment on today's show. Who you got? DEN for the Broncos, PHI for the Eagles. Get those predictions in. I'll give you my prediction coming up a little bit later. Coming up next, just around the corner, I'm going to give you my keys to the game, matchups to watch, and what the Eagles must do to move to a perfect 5-0. Before we do that, today's Philadelphia Eagles now brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks, the best daily fantasy sports app in the game, the #1 fantasy sports app in North America. You can win big up to 2,000 times your money, available all across the country. And right now, when you play your first $5 lineup, you get $50 in lineups back. There's also some new features here. PrizePicks is the only app that offers stacks, meaning you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. Want to pick more on Jalen Hurts' pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns? Now you can pick all of them in the same lineup only on PrizePicks. Follow other PrizePicks players directly on the app and copy their lineups in one click. Whether it's a friend, a celebrity partner, or just somebody whose picks you really like, hit the follow button and check out every lineup they create in the new feed tab on PrizePicks. They put their users first, withdrawals fast, safe, and secure, and you can test out your sports knowledge on America's #1 fantasy sports app. Here's our 3-pick power play. A.J. Brown not happy. I think the Eagles get him going. Let's go with more than 55.5 receiving yards. J.K. Dobbins, he's been having a really good year. More than a half rushing or receiving touchdown. And how about this? Jalen Hurts, more than 180.5 passing yards. I'm taking that. So here's the deal. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. All right, let's continue to keep the train moving here, and let's get to the back half of our Eagles Now preview between the Birds and the Denver Broncos. Coming up here on Philadelphia Eagles Now, Chase Senior hanging out here with you. In the lead up to this Eagles-Broncos game, really good matchup coming up on Sunday. I'm going to give you my keys to the game, top matchups to watch, what the Eagles must do to win, and of course, lastly, my prediction. Key to the game #1 for me for this Eagles defense is stopping the Broncos run game. And with the Eagles rushing defense, they've been a little bit leaky to start the year. And they haven't been as buttoned up and tidied as they were last year when they were fantastic in stopping the run. And this Broncos rushing offense paired with this terrific Broncos offensive line has really been the backbone for this Broncos offense to start the year because Bo Nix has played just okay. Their rush play percentage, 44.6%, 10th in the NFL. They're averaging 5.1 yards per carry, #5 in the league. Their rushes per game, 28.3, that ranks #9. Their rushing yards per game, 143.3. Very impressive. That comes in at #5. And they're finding the end zone on a per-game basis for touchdowns, 1.3. That's #6 in the NFL. And they signed J.K. Dobbins pretty late this offseason. I've always liked the player. I liked him coming out of Ohio State. He had some Achilles problems, a lot of injury issues throughout his career. He's having a really good season, and last year I thought he played very well as well for the Los Angeles Chargers. 57 carries, 323 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a long of 41. He's been that steady back. And then the Broncos in the draft really liked R.J. Harvey. In the preseason, he was getting a lot of buzz, and he can really pack a punch at 5'8", 205. He's been a good complement to J.K. Dobbins. 27 carries for a $138 and a long of 50. So he's very explosive. I like this game at UCF. The Broncos did as well. That's why they took him in the second round. He looks to be a really good player. But how both backs complement one another has impressed me so far this year behind an offensive line that I don't think gets enough credit for being one of the best offensive lines in football. That was the case last year because it's Denver and it's not really the sexiest media market, and they haven't had a ton of success ever since Peyton Manning left. There was that long playoff drought until they made the playoffs last year. A lot of people don't realize just how good this team is. Sean Payton's done a good job of really turning this organization around. Garrett Bowles, really good left tackle. You have Ben Powers at left guard, Luke Wattenberg at center, Quinn Miners, a dog at right guard, and then Mike McGlinchey at right tackle, kind of just an average player, but he's very athletic, a good run blocker in space. And for the Eagles here, why it's so important to stop the run. If you stop the run and you're able to take an early lead and force Bo Nix into a position where he has to play catch up and he has to throw it a lot and air it out, the Broncos become one-dimensional. And I like the Eagles' chances of winning the game if that happens. If Bo Nix has to drop back a lot and throw it, he is prone to turning the ball over. He has 4 interceptions so far this year. But if the Broncos are balanced and they're able to run the football successfully, move the chains, win time of possession, keep that Eagles offense, which is trying to find a rhythm on the sideline, it keeps the Eagles offense from finding that rhythm. And so that's a really important key in this game. Nix has thrown for 861 yards so far this year, completing just under 66% of his passes. He's thrown those 7 touchdowns to 4 picks. Key to the game number 2. This Eagles offense needs to catch a rhythm, and they need to find an identity. Now, I'm not hitting the panic button yet. I'm going to give Kevin Patullo some time. This is his first time ever calling plays at the NFL level, and the Eagles have had a very difficult schedule to start, and they've gone up against some really good defensive minds, and they've gone up against some really good defenses. But this Eagles offense needs to be more consistent, and they don't have that aforementioned identity. Are they a running team? Are they a throwing team? We have no idea. And a big reason why there's that big question mark is because the Eagles haven't been able to put together a full 60-minute game where they play sound offensive football for a full 4 quarters. I mean, the first half against the Cowboys, it was great. The Eagles had 3 first-half drives, and they scored touchdowns on those 3 drives. Now, A.J. Brown only had 1 target for 1 catch in that game, but Jalen Hurts was phenomenal, especially with his legs. Against the Chiefs, Steve Spagnuolo blitzed Jalen Hurts more than 60% of the time. Highest blitz rate since he became the Chiefs' defensive coordinator. And they sent the house at Philadelphia. And it's hard to generate explosives when that happens. It's hard to run the football against a loaded box. What did the Eagles do, though? They did make clutch plays late with the long ball from Hurts to Devontae Smith, being able to move the chains in critical spots, and that was awesome. But the full sample size in that game, undesirable, right? Second half against the Rams, after an awful first half, it was great. Hurts looked like an MVP. A.J. Brown went off for more than 100 yards and a touchdown. The pass game got going. Saquon Barkley got going a little bit. But that first half was as ugly as it gets. The first half against the Bucs, a great half, a great first 30 minutes where we saw some new wrinkles. We saw some creativity. The pitch play to Goddard when it was quads right, that play has been in the Eagles playbook for the last 4 or 5 years. The Eagles debut that. The shovel pass, just a great design, letting the block set up. A little bit later in the game, the tush-push trickery. That was in the second half. That was awesome. But Jalen Hurts did not complete a pass in the second half of that game. Now, was that because he suffered a concussion and didn't come out of the game? I mentioned it during the watch party. He got up a little bit wobbly. He didn't go to the blue tent. And after that point, didn't complete a pass. Wasn't the same guy. Who knows? But the point here being, the Eagles were not good in the second half of that game. The inverse with what happened against the Rams. And this needs to get fixed. This isn't a sustainable way to play championship level football. The Eagles are the first team in NFL history to start 4-0 despite averaging 4.2 yards per play or worse and less than 260 yards of offense per game. And this Eagles offense, when they're bad, they're really bad. When they're clicking, they look awesome. And I think the frustrations from all of us and A.J. Brown, they are valid. This is not an offensive formula that can win a Super Bowl. But there is time to figure it out, and there's the talent to figure it out. And if the Eagles offense can figure it out this week, I think that's pretty impressive. This is going to be a tough test and a tall test. This Broncos defense is legit. It's one of the best units in the NFL. And if this Eagles offense performs well against the likes of this Broncos defense, you have to give them credit. Now, here's where the Eagles stack up on both sides of the pill. 7th in points per game on offense, but 30th in yards per game, 30th in yards per play. But they are 8th on third downs. Number 1 in the red zone. 11 red zone trips, 11 touchdowns for the Eagles. On defense, 15th in points per game, 22nd in yards per game, 18th in yards per play. I think the eye test tells us they've been better than that. They're 14th on third downs, but great at limiting touchdowns in the red zone. Number 3, red zone touchdown scoring percentage. The Broncos having some similar issues on offense. 16th in points per game, but they're moving it. 9th in yards per game, 10th in yards per play, but 16th on third downs. Top 10 red zone offense, though. Defensively, stellar. Really good with their defensive line and in the secondary. Number 2 in points per game. Number 10 in yards per game defensively. 8th in yards per play. 4th on third downs. And how about this, folks? They've only given up touchdowns 25% of the time in the red zone. Number 1 red zone defense in the NFL. So you have the number 1 red zone offense against the number 1 red zone defense. What a great matchup to watch on Sunday. Key to the game number 3. If there is a weakness for this Broncos defense, it is their linebacking core. They made a big offseason addition, adding Dre Greenlaw, but he's on injured reserve because he can't get that quad right. And the Broncos' best linebacker, I would say, or at least the most productive, is Alex Singleton, who used to play for the Eagles and wasn't really a starting caliber player with Philadelphia. He's actually ended up having a pretty good career with Denver. He had 11 tackles on Monday Night Football. But in the pass game, he's not really a great coverage linebacker. He blitzed a lot against Cincinnati on Monday, but he doesn't really hold up well in coverage. And so this Broncos linebacking core is susceptible to getting exposed, especially without Dre Greenlaw here. And so what I want Kevin Patullo and this Eagles offense to do is to attack that middle area of the field in between the numbers and in between the hashes. How do you do that? You utilize your tight end in Dallas Goedert. 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games. You run a lot of shallow crosses and shoot. You can run some deep crosses as well. We saw Hurts layer some nice balls to the middle intermediate area of the field. You run some in-breaking routes. A.J. Brown is so good at those. That's a way for him to get involved. And then Saquon Barkley has this talent, but he's so good as a runner, and he does drop some passes that sometimes he's not utilized in this manner, but utilize Saquon as a receiver. You get him matched up against one of these Broncos linebackers, I'm taking Saquon. So you run some wheel routes, you run some delayed screens, you run some in-breakers where he fakes as a blocker, cuts it inside. That's how you attack the Broncos linebacking core. Key to the game number 4, this is something that kind of coincides, right? You get the pass game going, it gets the run game going. You get the ground game going, it gets the pass game open. And it really opens things up in that regard. These are really the big issues on offense right now. It's that the offensive line is missing some blocks. The wide receiver blocking, especially with A.J. Brown, has been great. The execution just hasn't been pinpoint. And Jordan Mailata said this after the game. We're a missed block here or there from having a lot of explosive plays. I also don't love how the Eagles have run into a lot of loaded boxes. But on offense specifically, they're just not really playing complementary football. The pass game is not helping out the run game. The run game is not helping out the pass game. And because of that, Saquon Barkley's rushing yards every game have actually gone down from week 1, and he's not having a 2025 like he had in 2024. Part of that is because of how defenses are attacking and defending the Eagles. They're not letting Saquon beat them. And because of that, he hasn't had a great year. 77 carries for only 237 yards. I don't think that's because he's lost it after leading the NFL in touches last year, having more than 2,000 yards. He looks great. He looks explosive. He looks fast and physical. He hasn't lost a step. It's because of how defenses are defending the Eagles, and their offensive line hasn't been that great. And the pass game has been inconsistent. And so this has kind of been a snowball effect for Philadelphia to start the year. And this offensive line must improve. This is the backbone of this offense. And Jeff Stoutland's unit is highly paid. They have a lot of great players. But outside of Jordan Mailata, the rest of the unit hasn't played great. Lane Johnson's been very good, but he's been in and out of the lineup. And Landon Dickerson has been really, really bad. Mostly, though, it's been the missed assignments that are happening so often that has led to a lack of explosive plays. Can't happen against Denver. Can't happen consistently. Otherwise, this Eagles offense will continue to be a maddening unit. And then key to the game number 5. Got to feed A.J. Brown, and you have to scheme him open. And it's not necessarily for a lack of targets this season. You look at his targets. Now, in week 1 against the Cowboys, I don't know how he gets targeted one time, but against the Chiefs, targeted 8 times. Week 3, targeted 10 times. Against the Bucs, targeted 9 times. But the routes have been predictable. The play calling has been vanilla and predictable at times. The Eagles have lacked aggressiveness in the pass game. And defenses, because of that, have found this Eagles offense and A.J. Brown easy to defend. And so you have to dive into your creativity to try to generate explosive plays, to just find ways for A.J. Brown to find success, get the ball in his hands so that he can make an impact, because he feels as though he hasn't been able to make an impact. And offensive balance obviously can help that out a lot as well. Going to be a really good matchup between A.J. Brown and Patrick Surtain, the 2024 Defensive Player of the Year. This is one of the top matchups across the entire NFL. You have elite against elite. And you just don't want A.J. Brown to blow up on the sideline. Not a good look, and obviously adds more drama to a team that so far is 4-0. Keep him happy, feed him, but get creative with how to get him involved against one of the top defenses in the NFL. Find your balance, and if you do that, you become really difficult to defend as an offense, and in turn, less predictable with what you want to do. All right, predict the score. Broncos, Eagles. This is a fantastic matchup once again here in week 4, as this Eagles schedule every single week has given us really good games. My prediction, there's no way that the Eagles should lose this game. They're at home. They're the better team. The Broncos are good, but they're not ready to be on the level of the Eagles. The Birds also have the rest advantage and the body clock advantage. We've seen moments where this team is starting to round into form. It all comes down to doing it more consistently and doing it over the span of 60 minutes. Give me the Birds 28-22. They move to 5-0.